Now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines, deep in the trenches of the Patriot resistance, leading the charge in the battle for liberty, this is the Jayson Veley Program.
Hello folks, Jayson Veley here. This is the Jayson Veley Program. I am Jayson Veley. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. If you want to get in touch with me, the email address is thejaysonveleyprogram@gmail.com. thejaysonveleyprogram@gmail.com. We also have a Skype number if you want to call in and leave a message to potentially be played on the air. 860-266-2852 is the number. 860-266-2852. Folks, can we be honest with ourselves for a minute here? Can we be honest? There is a crisis at the southern border. There's no getting around it. There's no getting around it. You could try to slap a happy face on it. Could try to, coat it in glitter and sprinkles and all the rest, but the fact of the matter is there is right now a crisis at the southern border. There is no other way to look at it. If it's not a crisis, then what the hell is it? You have migrants rushing to the border, many of whom, have shirts on that say, "Biden, please let us in," or something to that effect. I mean, I've seen the pictures online. You can look them up. They're all wearing these "Biden, please let us in" shirts. You have children being detained en masse, separated from their parents or guardians or what have you. It's chaos. It's complete and utter chaos, and it's going to get worse. Governor Abbott of Texas is predicting that the surge is going to continue. It's not going to slow down. It's going to increase exponentially. And I take him at his word because he's right there at the border, for God's sakes. He's been touring the border. He knows what's going on. He's seeing it with his own eyes. Unlike Joe Biden, who's sitting pretty in the White House. Not really doing a damn thing, if I may be so blunt. My problem, folks, I have a lot of problems, honestly, with how the Biden administration is handling this crisis. But one thing that really troubles me is they can't even call it a crisis. They can't even call it what it is. Joe Biden won't say it. Won't call it a crisis. I haven't heard Kamala Harris call it a crisis. Joe Biden's press secretary, Psaki, what the hell's her first name? She won't call it a crisis either. Take a listen to this. They asked her, again, Joe Biden's press secretary, "Hey, why won't you guys call this a crisis?" Here's what she had to say.
Why has this administration been so reluctant to call it a crisis with a huge uptick in the number of migrants being detained, including thousands of children? If that doesn't qualify as a crisis, what does?
Well, because we think that it's most important to explain the substantive policy of what's happening, what the root causes are of why these kids are coming, and why...
This is such a liberal answer. Skirt around the question. No direct answers. We believe it's important to instead do this, this, and this. Okay, why don't you do this, this, and this, and this, but also call it what it is, a crisis? I'm sorry, let me play that clip over. It's really short, but I do want you to hear the whole thing. Listen.
Why has this administration been so reluctant to call it a crisis with a huge uptick in the number of migrants being detained, including thousands of children? If that doesn't qualify as a crisis, what does?
Well, because we think that it's most important to explain the substantive policy of what's happening, what the root causes are of why these kids are coming, and what we're doing to try to solve what is a very challenging circumstance at the border. And that's the information the American people are looking for. So that's what we're working to provide.
Yeah, but you know what? The American people are also looking for our leaders, who unfortunately is a mental patient, to call it what it is, to be honest with ourselves. to be honest with us. This is a crisis. By the way, her name's Jen Psaki. Jen Psaki. Woman is a complete dingbat. She knows absolutely nothing. She's always completely unprepared. She's an embarrassment, is what she is. But there she is, refusing to call this a crisis. They're intentionally refusing to call it a crisis. Now, listen to this, folks. Listen to this. Article from Newsmax. Texas Governor Abbott says Biden is doing nothing. Biden is doing nothing to solve the problem we have right now at the border. You'll recall that a few episodes back, I think it might have been last week, I talked about how Abbott has been extremely vocal about this. Taking to social media and so forth, saying that the Biden administration needs to end catch and release in particular, because what the Biden administration is doing, and their lack of immigration laws, they're releasing illegal immigrants into their communities, many of whom have already tested positive for COVID-19, but that's a different issue. But my point is, Governor Abbott has been extremely vocal about this. He's been trying to warn the Biden administration. And here he is now saying that they're not listening, they're not really doing a damn thing. The Border Patrol has advised the White House about the growing immigration crisis at the U.S. border, but the Biden administration has not responded or escalated efforts to alleviate the problem, according to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who toured his state line by helicopter yesterday. I tell you what, folks, I've always liked Governor Abbott, but he is really on fire lately. This man is a conservative through and through, and I like his fire. I really do. I like his vibe, so to speak. Anyway, the Biden administration, this is what Abbott told Fox News' America Reports program. Quote, the Biden administration continues to basically refuse to even admit the involvement and the necessity of ICE, that is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, being involved in the process. It is ICE that is involved in that detention process. It is ICE that has its detention facilities overrun. It is ICE that needs to expand those facilities because of the people coming across the border illegally. I'd imagine, ladies and gentlemen, that for ICE, it's got to be pretty damn hard to do your job with someone like Joe Biden in the White House who doesn't believe ICE, the entire organization as a whole, should even exist anymore. Abbott pointed to the growing numbers of people coming in as evidence that a crisis is at hand and said it's still early in the year and the emergency will get much worse. If you look at the Rio Grande Valley region, the number of people who were apprehended last year was about 90,000, Abbott said. In just the first 2.5 months of this year alone, there was far more than that, about 108,000. So in all of last year, in the Rio Grande Valley region, 90,000 people apprehended. There's far more than that this year in just 2.5 months. This isn't a crisis? Joe Biden doesn't have the balls to call this a crisis? These numbers include 800 criminal immigrants, including people who were previously arrested in the United States and deported, said Abbott. Included in those are 76 sex offenders and 62 gang members, including MS-13 gang members. He said, this is not only a numerical crisis, it is a very dangerous situation. It absolutely is. And unfortunately, because we have a president who isn't about America first, but rather about America last, the safety of the American people often takes a back seat. I'm just telling you what's going on. This is the reality of the situation. I know it sucks. I know it might be tough to hear, but this is the truth. Joe Biden has effectively prioritized immigrants coming to the southern border over his own people. The crisis is a direct result of the Biden administration's policy shift, said Abbott, and comes from the elimination of Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, which is what has suddenly allowed so many people to come back in. Of course. Of course, all this is happening because Joe Biden has reversed essentially everything that Donald Trump did with regards to immigration. Now, what does that say about Donald Trump's immigration policies? Maybe that they worked? I mean, if you have a president, Joe Biden, come in and undo pretty much everything that Donald Trump did in his 4 years in office, and suddenly we have this crisis on our hands, doesn't that show that, A, Joe Biden's immigration policies, or lack thereof, suck, and B, that Donald Trump's are pretty damn good and protected the American people? We're all about common sense here on the Jayson Veley program, ladies and gentlemen. We're all about logic and facts, and those are some of the things that Democrats really don't like very much, but we're going to keep saying them anyways. Now, listen to this. The Florida Attorney General, the hell is her name? It is Moody. What's Ashley Moody? I've really never heard of her before, never heard her speak, don't really know too much about her, but she appeared on Fox News recently, I believe it was yesterday, to announce that she is officially suing the Biden administration because they're releasing criminal illegal aliens into Florida communities. Can you believe this? Unfortunately, I can. That's how crazy this whole thing is. I can believe this. This is the America we live in now, folks. Listen to this. This is Attorney General Ashley Moody from Florida on Fox News.
Joining us now with an exclusive announcement is that Attorney General Ashley Moody. Attorney General, what prompted this action?
You know, I've been speaking for weeks now and alerting Americans to the fact that this administration is thumbing its nose to its responsibilities under federal law. It is required to deport criminal aliens that are here illegally, and it is just saying we're not going to do it anymore. First, they canceled Operation Talon, which targeted sex offenders here in the United States illegally.
Let me stop. Why would you do that? What justification could you possibly have for ending a program that specifically targets illegal alien sex offenders? What reason could you possibly have on God's green earth to end something like that? That's what I mean. Putting the American people last. America last. Keep listening.
And now they've released guidance, which is basically releasing into our streets serious criminal offenders. They're canceling detainers and requiring our law enforcement leaders to release them back into our states. And this includes heroin traffickers, people that are breaking into homes, use of a firearm with some of these felonies. I mean, it's unbelievable the folks that our law enforcement leaders are required to release. My frustration has boiled over, and we're going to hold them accountable in federal court.
Well, I hope it goes somewhere. I really do. This is what the Biden administration absolutely deserves. We need to hit them with everything we've got, legally speaking. Because this is getting out of hand. But it's not a crisis, don't you know? It's not a crisis. We're not going to call it a crisis, says Jen Psaki. No. We're not focused on labels. We're focused on what we're doing to solve this problem, which is nothing. Not a damn thing. But we're not going to call it a crisis. Folks, I think that I think that we have to consider the very real possibility that the chaos that's going on right now at the border is largely being ignored for a reason. Largely being ignored for a reason. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Okay, I'm not like an Alex Jones type. Sorry for all of you out there who listen to that gentleman. I don't. I'm not into conspiracies. However, I do know and have a fairly good understanding of the Democrat Party and how they operate. And I know that when there is a crisis, oftentimes it's exploited and taken advantage of. Sometimes the crisis itself is intentionally created or exacerbated for political gain. And I think that's something important for us to consider here. I mean, ask yourself the following questions. Why does Joe Biden oppose ICE? Why does he want to get rid of ICE? Why is he releasing illegals into U.S. communities? Why does he oppose a strong border? Why is he really not doing anything to solve what is a crisis at the southern border at this point? Why? Why? Could it be because all of this is politically expedient for the Democrat Party? I think in many respects, yes. I think in many respects, the Democrats are creating, if not embracing, this chaos. Because their goal ultimately, let's be honest, is to get illegal aliens into the country and to get them voting. That's the goal. That's the end game here. And so, of course, they're not really going to take this as seriously as they should be because they want many of these people in our communities. Because they eventually want them voting. Because they want power. That's the truth. I don't think that's so far-fetched. I think many people would agree with me on that. There was a 2012 study done by the Pew Research Center that found that among Latino immigrants not in the country legally, that is, illegal alien Latinos, 31% identify as Democrats and 4% as Republicans. You think the Democrats have seen this study or similar studies? You think they're keeping that in mind? You're damn straight they are. Among Hispanic illegal aliens, this same study found 54% lean Democrat, 19% lean Republicans. So really, as a whole, illegal aliens coming into this country are overwhelmingly Democrat. Overwhelmingly Democrat. Why? Because many of them, they align with the Democrat Party, the ideals of the Democrat Party. Many of them coming into the country illegally. I'm not talking about legal immigrants here. I'm talking about illegal immigrants. Many of them don't give a damn about assimilating, embracing our culture and our values. And many of them, I'll say it, are looking to take advantage of our extremely generous welfare system. Enter the Democrat Party to save the day. And again, the end game is to get them voting Democrat. That's the end game here, folks. So, I offer that as a potential reason why Joe Biden isn't really doing much to solve the crisis at the southern border. It's because he partially, if not fully, embraces what's going on. Embraces this chaos. We've seen Democrats take advantage of chaos before. Never let a crisis go to waste. as they say. I think this is what's going on. And yes, it's going to get worse. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Joe Biden won't do anything. I'm not going to sit here and say that he won't act at some capacity. He probably will. He'll probably do something at some point because, you know, the flip side of the coin is there's a tremendous amount of political pressure that he has to consider as well. But I'm just going based on how Democrats think, how they strategize, and how whenever they have an opportunity to gain more power, they will seize that opportunity. Just something to think about. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.
This is the Jayson Veley Program.
Conservatives. How many times have you been called a racist by someone on the left? What about sexist, bigoted, homophobic, xenophobic, right-wing radical extremist? These are all buzzwords that liberals use as a means of labeling conservatives as something that they're not. And let me tell you something, I, like most of you, am getting pretty damn sick of it. That's why I started my own conservative comedy series, Living with a Liberal. Hosted on the popular video sharing app TikTok, Living with a Liberal features two fictional characters, played by yours truly, whose political differences could not be more obvious. It's a comedic take on the modern-day liberal Democrat, because if they can brand us as racists and bigots, we can brand them as triggered, oversensitive snowflakes. Check out Living with a Liberal today on TikTok. Just search Jayson Veley and you'll be taken right to my homepage. I have over 100 episodes on there, so you won't be short on content anytime soon. Enjoy. Are you a pissed off liberal that wants to give me a piece of your mind? Or maybe you're a conservative that simply has a question or comment. Either way, you should know that there's a few different ways you can reach me. Feel free to send me an email at thejaysonveleyprogram@gmail.com. Or if you prefer, you can also call the show number and leave me a voicemail. 860-266-2852. Be sure to provide your name and where you're writing or calling from. Thanks a lot. I look forward to hearing from you. Welcome back to the show, folks. I want to tell you about someone who is trying to get into the Biden administration that many of you probably haven't heard of for whatever reason. Maybe you have. I don't know. I hadn't heard about her until today when I was doing show prep. And what I found in my research on this individual is kind of shocking. Very concerning, to say the least. Her name is Vanita Gupta. And she is likely going to be Joe Biden's Associate Attorney General. She had her confirmation hearing yesterday. I don't know how many days it's going to go on for, but at least part of it was held yesterday before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Vanita Gupta. Now, in my research on this woman, because again, I hadn't heard about her. I didn't know anything about her. She strikes me as an anti-law enforcement liberal. She does. Now, in the hearing, and I'm going to play audio in just a minute here, she has to sound kind of centrist. She has to conduct herself in a way that isn't radical Democrat, leftist, but she is. And I'm going to prove that to you here. In the past, let me start with this. In the past, Vanita Gupta has voiced her support for ending qualified immunity for police officers. Now, for those of you who don't know, qualified immunity shields police officers from most lawsuits for alleged wrongdoing. Not all lawsuits, because I could hear the liberals right now, well, this whole thing, qualified immunity, just, protects officers and there's no accountability whatsoever. No, that's not true. It's not all lawsuits. This isn't saying that there's no accountability in the police force. It's simply saying that police officers are shielded from most lawsuits for alleged wrongdoing. Because otherwise, you could sue police officers for really anything. And instead of being out in the field serving their communities, police officers would constantly be tied up in court. So that's a brief background of qualified immunity. And in the past, Vanita Gupta has said that she supports ending it, meaning taking away these protections for police officers. Now, she was questioned about this at the hearing yesterday by Senator John Cornyn. And I want to play this audio. Listen to how she dances around the question, which really was pretty straightforward. The question was simply, do you now support ending qualified immunity for police officers? Straightforward question. She wouldn't answer it. Listen to this from yesterday.
Do you support the elimination of qualified immunity for lawsuits against the police?
Senator, I suspect that you're referring to testimony that I gave before this committee over the summer when I was representing the consensus views of the Civil Rights Coalition.
Folks, wasn't it a straightforward question? He's not referencing anything in the past. He's asking right now, where you sit, do you support ending qualified immunity? But she starts her response by saying, Senator, I'm sure you're referencing this other time when X, Y, and Z. No, right now, do you support ending qualified immunity? What is it with liberals, ladies and gentlemen? Can't they follow a simple question? Keep listening.
At the leadership conference. In matters of policy, if I'm confirmed as Associate Attorney General, my guide, and I know this issue and many others around police accountability, the Senate's going to be considering in the Justice and Policing Act, we will follow the President's policy agenda so long as it's consistent with the law. I have been talking a lot to law enforcement the last several months about all kinds of issues around the tension of how to ensure accountability while ensuring that law enforcement can do their jobs. And if I am confirmed as Associate Attorney General, I will continue.
Now, let me stop. She talks like it's, it's a balancing act, right? We need 50-50 here. We need to figure out how police officers can still be held accountable while also at the same time making sure that they can do our jobs. If you had to guess, ladies and gentlemen, which side do you think this woman leans more towards? Holding police officers accountable or letting them do their jobs? Probably holding them accountable, right? Which, in many cases, infringes upon their ability to let them do their jobs. I'm just saying, just pointing that out. Keep listening.
To leverage these relationships in law enforcement to understand their perspectives. And my commitment will solely be to the Constitution and federal law. Obviously, the doctrine of qualified immunity is a judicially
Notice she's not answering the question.
And applies to many more public sector employees than simply police officers. But that will be my commitment.
Well, I heard your answer, but I didn't hear you answer the specific question. Do you support the elimination of qualified immunity for lawsuits against government employees, including police officers?
Senator, from where I sit now, today, in my personal capacity,
yes.
I want to understand more the perspectives of law enforcement as well as the need. And I think we all recognize that I heard it really from every member of the committee when I testified this summer about the importance of ensuring that...
She's filibustering, folks. She's filibustering. It's such a simple question. Do you support it now? Or don't you support it now? Do you want to end qualified immunity now? Yes or no? Well, Senator, I think that blah, 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 blah. No. Yes or no? Well, Senator, I think that it's actually, very complicated. I think that blah, blah, blah. Just answer the damn question. What the hell is the problem? She doesn't want to answer the question, folks, does she? Because The answer is yes. She believes in ending qualified immunity, taking away protections for police officers. She believes in it. Let's keep listening.
Communities have faith that there is accountability when individual law enforcement engages in misconduct. I hear it from law enforcement as well, and I would look forward to working with law enforcement, with members of this committee, as you engage these really difficult and challenging questions that we're facing as a country right now about how to ensure accountability when misconduct happens, and how to ensure that law enforcement have the support they need to do their jobs.
So you no longer support the elimination of qualified immunity?
Third time.
Is that your testimony?
Senator, as I said, I was testifying this summer representing the views of the coalition.
My question is, do you no longer support the elimination of qualified immunity?
I will say I don't come in supporting it, elimination one way or another. My duty, if confirmed as Associate Attorney General, will be to follow the president's lead on these kinds of policy issues, so long as they're consistent with the law, and to engaging and continuing to engage with civil rights leaders, community leaders, law enforcement on these very difficult questions of accountability.
Yeah, doesn't that sound like a woman who really has the police officers' backs? Doesn't that sound like a woman who really stands with law enforcement? Not at all. Somehow, ladies and gentlemen, I think that she still believes in ending qualified immunity, stripping protections from officers. I think many of you listening would arrive at the same conclusion. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about this woman. And again, I'm talking about this because this has kind of fallen under the radar a bit, and I'm sure many people don't know about this, who she is and what she stands for. But if she's going to be the Associate Attorney General, we need to know, we the people need to know where she stands, right? Isn't that important? Let me tell you this. Vanita Gupta was also, I believe she still is, in fact, I know she still is, the president of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. She's the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Now, out of morbid curiosity, I Googled the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. I went to their website. I read a little bit about it. Sure enough, it says right there on the About Us page, President CEO Vanita Gupta. And you know what I found, ladies and gentlemen? I found out that this organization really is a radical social justice organization. Oh, yes. Let me read you a few excerpts from their website. Fight for racial justice, one page says. The crisis of police... Listen to how they phrase this. This is from an organization run by who will likely become Joe Biden's Associate Attorney General. Listen to how they talk about law enforcement. And then you tell me if she stands with the police. End police brutality. The crisis of police killing black people has reached a new boiling point, they write. Don't want to stay silent? Call your senators and tell them to make it clear that police brutality and violence have no place in America. Well, it's true. It doesn't. No one wants a police force that is violent for no reason, that is racist. I just don't think that's the case. I never have, and I probably never will. Together, we must demand bold and sweeping action and break the cycle of violence towards black communities. Violence towards black communities. Violence towards black communities. I certainly hope they're not implying here that law enforcement is a violent threat to black communities. I hope not. Because that's absurd. These brave men and women in blue put their lives on the line every damn day to protect these communities. Our leaders must support real accountability measures to change policing culture and invest in black communities and others hardest hit by over-criminalization. Demand change now. She is the president of a radical left-wing organization, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if we go over to another page here, we can read where it talks about fighting against hate with a picture of someone protesting holding a resist sign. Now again, it sounds good, right? It's a great headline. Fighting against hate. Sounds good. No one likes hate. I hate hate. But listen to how they talk on their website. The No Ban Act is the first civil rights bill in history that explicitly protects Muslims by rejecting Trump and Stephen Miller's xenophobia and white nationalism. The House passed the No Ban Act to help ensure that no president can enact any kind of sweeping and discriminatory ban. Now tell the Senate to pass the No Ban Act immediately and stop this administration. This has obviously not been updated in a little while. Stop this administration's anti-Muslim bigotry. No president should be able to ban people from our country based on national origin or religion. All families must be able to live freely together. Tell Congress to pass the No Ban Act now. So, calling Trump xenophobic, white nationalist, doesn't exactly scream level-headedness or, moderate politics. And then lastly, I'll just read one more, because I thought this was interesting. Again, from this woman's website, Vanita Gupta, who's going to be in the Biden administration. Our children deserve safe schools. This really gets to the heart of how she and her organization feel about cops. As the nation wrestles with how to ensure the health and safety of children in schools, one thing is not the answer: the police. Studies have shown police in schools cause harm to Black, Native, Latino, LGBTQ students, girls, and students with disabilities. I don't know what study they're citing there. Something tells me it's pretty skewed. It also leads to higher rates of arrest among students. What children need instead are counselors and nurses. And then it goes on. But that's the gist of it. So, anti-cop. Anti-law enforcement. Look, I'm not saying that schools don't need counselors and nurses. They absolutely 100% do. Social workers, all the rest. But why can't we have those in addition to police officers? I just point this out, folks, because I thought it was very interesting to dive into who this woman is. She is president and CEO of a radical social justice leftist organization. And she's likely going to become Joe Biden's associate attorney general. Oh, and at one point, too, she... I was going to bring this up, get more in depth into it, but I don't have much time. I believe it was in 2012, she's also written about decriminalizing hard drugs. Hard drugs. I'm not talking about a little pot. I'm talking about heroin, cocaine, meth, and so on and so forth. She's written about decriminalizing them. She was actually asked about it in the hearing yesterday, and of course she said, well, those aren't my views anymore. I don't believe in that. But that's another red flag to me, and it should be to you as well. So I don't know, folks. I have a bad feeling about this. I think that I think that Joe Biden's Justice Department is going to do more harm than good over the next 4 years. I think they're going to divide us even further among racial lines. And it's all going to be because of policies like this. Policies that don't back the police, don't give them the support they need, but rather make it more difficult for the cops to do their jobs. Like ending qualified immunity. Mark my words, she's going to do it, and much more. I'll be right back. Conservatives. How many times have you been called a racist by someone on the left? What about sexist, bigoted, homophobic, xenophobic, right-wing radical extremist? These are all buzzwords that liberals use as a means of labeling conservatives as something that they're not. And let me tell you something, I, like most of you, am getting pretty damn sick of it. That's why I started my own conservative comedy series, Living with a Liberal. Hosted on the popular video sharing app TikTok, Living with a Liberal features two fictional characters, played by yours truly, whose political differences could not be more obvious. It's a comedic take on the modern-day liberal Democrat, because if they can brand us as racists and bigots, we can brand them as triggered, oversensitive snowflakes. Check out Living with a Liberal today on TikTok. Just search Jayson Veley and you'll be taken right to my homepage. I have over 100 episodes on there, so you won't be short on content anytime soon. Enjoy. Are you a pissed off liberal that wants to give me a piece of your mind? Or maybe you're a conservative that simply has a question or comment. Either way, you should know that there's a few different ways you can reach me. Feel free to send me an email at thejaysonveleyprogram@gmail.com. Or if you prefer, you can also call the show number and leave me a voicemail. 860-266-2852. Be sure to provide your name and where you're writing or calling from. Thanks a lot. I look forward to hearing from you. Folks, welcome back. I just want to make something clear before we move on here. Just want to clear something up. This from the Washington Free Beacon, a little bit more about qualified immunity. Because I ended the last segment saying that Vanita Gupta and Biden's Justice Department will likely put an end to qualified immunity. Listen to this again from the Free Beacon. Qualified immunity is a judge-made doctrine, so the Justice Department cannot end it on its own, but Biden's Department of Justice could put its prestige and resources behind abolition efforts by filing legal briefs opposing qualified immunity in general, or its application to specific instances of misconduct. So I just wanted to get that on the record because there might be a liberal out there who's listening to this saying, well, the Justice Department can't end qualified immunity. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. I understand that, but I also wanted to point out, as the Washington Free Beacon did, that there are still ways they could do it. There are still methods they could take advantage of, legal proceedings, and so on and so forth. So, just to clear that up. All right. Did you guys hear that there was a sixth woman now who has accused Andrew Cuomo of sexual harassment? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Number 6 has stepped forward. OAN reporting on this. Yet another woman has come forward accusing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexual harassment and is reportedly a current staffer. That's according to a bombshell report by the Albany Times Union on Tuesday, yesterday. The latest accuser, whose identity is being held by the outlet, is reportedly a member of Cuomo's executive chamber staff. The report said the woman alleged Cuomo inappropriately touched her late last year at the governor's mansion, where she was called to work. However, Cuomo has refused to step down and continues to deny any wrongdoing. You know, this is interesting because Cuomo specifically said This is the reason he gave for not stepping down. I think it was last week. He said, "I will not step down because I have never inappropriately touched a woman." And here we go, number 6, saying that yes, Cuomo inappropriately touched me. I think this guy is a snake, folks. I really do. I just have a bad feeling. I think things are a lot worse than we know. I think there's a lot of women out there who, a lot more women, I should say, who probably want to come forward but aren't for whatever reason. I don't know. I think this guy is a pig. I really do. And yes, I do think he should resign. 6 women now. It's not looking good for all Andrew, folks. It's really not. But we'll see what happens. Part of me thinks that he's too egotistical, too power hungry, to take any sort of responsibility, any real accountability, and step down. I don't think he'll do it, but that's not going to stop me from saying that he should do it. All right, we got a few minutes left. I received an email last night from a listener that I wanted to read on the air. This is from Derek in Utah. It's a 2-part question that he asks. But anyway, his email reads, "Hey Jason, been a fan for a bit. I've been trying to think of some questions and I'm sure I'll have more soon. I've been listening to News Daily since COVID hit, and that's when I found your TikTok and then your YouTube. And obviously my podcast too, I'm assuming, if he's emailing me a question for the show. He asks, number 1, what could Biden do at this point to turn things around? I think he's doing more harm than good at this point, like with jobs and the voter fraud, like you said on your show. I don't like Biden, but I want the best for our country at the same time." Well, I'll stop there and answer your first question before going on to your second. What could Biden do to turn things around? First of all, I want to make it clear that he's not going to turn things around. I know that sounds kind of doesn't sound too great, doesn't sound too pretty. Might sound cynical, but it's the truth. He's not going to turn things around. This is who Joe Biden is. He is who he is. He believes in what he believes in. He's a radical leftist through and through, being controlled, by the way, in many respects, by a lot of other radical leftists, all telling him what to do, pressuring him, and so on and so forth. So I want to make that clear from the start, that he's not going to change. He's not going to turn things around. So abandon all hope of that. We need to defeat him is what we need to do. But let's just accept your question for what it is. What could Biden do to turn things around? Well, let's start by embracing liberty. Let's start by embracing the Constitution. Let's start by embracing strong borders. Let's start by embracing the free market system. That's how we could turn things around. Just simply going back to America first, not America last. That's how we could turn things around. But as I answer this in the way that I just did, you see how ridiculous it is to even think that Joe Biden could turn things around, because he's not going to do any of the things I just listed. He's not going to stand for the Constitution. In fact, he's going to continue shredding it. He's not going to embrace the free market. He's going to continue destroying it and inching us closer and closer to socialism. So that's that. I mean, I don't know how else to answer that question other than to say, he's not going to turn things around. This is who he is. But those are the things that he would have to do in order to turn things around. But again, the point is moot. It's kind of irrelevant for me to even say that. So anyway, I'll move on to the second part of your question. Do you think there'll ever be term limits on people like Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. I'm more on the right like you, but I feel like even Mitch needs term limits. I'll say especially Mitch. I feel like once you get that old, and out of touch with the real world, you need to get out. I don't know if it'll ever get done, though. Those are my only questions for now. Love listening to your show. Thank you, Derek. Well, Derek, thank you so much for writing. I really appreciate it. Great questions. You know, it's funny the way you phrase that, by the way, when you ask about term limits. You said, I feel like even Mitch needs term limits. I wouldn't even phrase it that way. I would say, especially people like Mitch McConnell. I don't give a damn that he's a Republican. Mitch McConnell is a perfect example of why we need term limits. Yes, we need them. Yes, we absolutely need them. Because you spelled it out. You explained it perfectly, Derek. You said that once people get, old and out of touch, these politicians who have just been sitting in Washington, D.C. for decades, they get out of touch and we need just to breathe new life into Washington, D.C. We need young blood in the Republican Party. We need term limits. We absolutely need term limits. Now, and by the way, you mentioned Nancy Pelosi. That woman I'd support her leaving office tomorrow, for God's sakes. Forget term limits. That woman's mentally ill. I'm sorry, but she's nuts. She should never have been in holding office in the first place. But you know how California Democrats are. Now, will term limits ever happen? I don't know. I really don't know. I hope that they do. This is an idea that's been brought up multiple times in the past. I know that, for example, Ted Cruz has been a big advocate of introducing term limits. Will it ever happen? I don't know. I just can't say one way or another. I hope it does, and I know a lot of other conservatives out there who also hope that it happens. But we shall see. Again, Derek, thank you very much for your email. If you too want to get in touch with me, you can do so by emailing the Jayson Veley Program at gmail.com. The Jayson Veley Program at gmail.com. I love getting mail from you guys, and I'll do my best to read your questions or your comments on the air. And then don't forget about the Skype number if you want to call and leave a voicemail. 860-266-2852. 860-266-2852 is the number for that. Give me a call. It'll ring once and then go straight to voicemail. I'd love to hear from you. All right, folks. That's all the time we have for today. I'll wrap up the week tomorrow on Thursday with the last show of the week. Until then, God bless and God save this great nation.